So this is a Fender 60s road-worn Stratocaster in Olympic white, and I'm going to show you that this one is very, very road-worn. You see there kind of close up, it's got some checking to the finish in some places, which is really cool, at least in my opinion. They don't all get this kind of a treatment. And so this one is Olympic white, but you can see it's quite yellowed, which is kind of a nice effect. It's got the rosewood fretboard, and MX11 designates it 2011, made in Mexico. See if I can show the back of the body here. So yeah, very cool. I get a lot of these road warns to sell, but very few of them look quite like this. You can see that they've got the back of the neck all the way down to bare wood there, which most of them do, but as far as the wear on the body, this is a nice example. If you're into kind of a heavy relic look, that is. Okay, so I have already gone over this thing and cleaned it all up and polished the frets, cleaned the fretboard. So we're just going to do a setup on it now, and just going to sight down the neck and look for the bend in the neck. And it's got quite a bit of it here, so a good amount of relief in the neck. And I like to set up a guitar, I like to start with a pretty flat neck and then go from there. So to flatten this out, I want to tighten the truss rod. A lot of Fenders, you can adjust the truss rod up here at the nut. Since this one is kind of a vintage type reissue guitar, they did it like the old guitars do, and you can see there's a little adjustment in here. So to get to that, we get to take off the neck. When I take the neck off to get at the truss rod, I always just put a capo at the first fret, and then I loosen the strings. I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 turns is usually enough, I think. And that way, when the neck comes off, there's not a bunch of string tension. Okay, turn the guitar over, let the capo kind of be off the table so the guitar's not resting on it. And loosen the screws back here. And usually when I loosen the 4th screw, the guitar is going to pop up a little bit because there is still some string tension here. Just like that. And I hold them very carefully together, turn it over, just leave the screws in there, it won't hurt it. Gently dislodge the neck, and we will see right there where we can adjust that truss rod. It's always good to take a look at what's printed on the heel of the neck, and you can kind of verify the year the guitar was made. This obviously kind of verifies it's a 2011 guitar. Every now and then the serial number will indicate a year like 2011, and then you'll see on the heel of the neck it's like 2010. Sometimes it's just a little bit different than what the serial number indicates, and this one will probably be the more accurate. You can also look in the neck pocket of the guitar, and let's see what this one says. So this one also has a date. A lot of times the dates in here get smudged or smeared or whatever, but this one I can clearly see says 2011. And every now and then you may even figure out that a neck is not original to a body by doing this. Sometimes people change parts on a guitar and you can't even really tell, but obviously if there's 2 different dates, there's a chance at least that they did not start out together. Another thing I see here is this has a little shim, a rear shim. It's a very thin one, so I'm just gonna leave it be, and we'll hope that the last person that set this up knew what they were doing. If not, we may end up taking that out. But okay, so we need to tighten this guy because we want to straighten out the neck, flatten out the neck, I mean. So first you loosen about a quarter turn just to release some tension. Go back to where we were, and now I'm gonna give it, let's see, that's about a half turn, another half turn. It did have quite a bit of relief in it. Maybe a tiny bit more, and we'll see where that puts us. So got the neck back on here. If you're real careful when you put the neck back on, you can end up with the strings still just all set up correctly, and then just tune up and take that capo off. And I can see we've got a nice flat neck, pretty flat now it looks like. The neck looks much flatter now. Got the capo back on. We're just gonna measure the relief. So you can tell a lot by sighting down the neck, but you don't really know exactly how much relief you have until you pull out a feeler gauge. You can get one of these for probably $2 or $3. And the way I do it is I fret here on the 17th fret, and I check on the 8th fret, again with the capo on the 1st. Okay, we're just measuring from the very top of the fret to the bottom of the string, seeing what we can fit in there. So 008, that might just work, and it seemed to be playing okay when I was just playing a couple chords. I'm gonna check the action real quick. It's very low. When we tighten the truss rod, we brought the strings down closer to the neck. So when you tighten, you get lower action, and you often have to raise it up a little bit at that point. Flattening out a neck, I'll just check down low to see if there's any buzzing on the strings. Just a little bit. Just a little bit choked right there, but not bad. But I will be raising up the action, and I feel that will probably get rid of any of that choke sound once we get the strings a little higher up off the fretboard. So I'm just going to take my string action ruler and my handy little Allen wrench screwdriver that I've got. It's a lot faster than a normal Allen wrench using one of these, and I can just go across. I think I said the action was sitting around 0.040 to 0.050, and I'll just bring all these strings up a little bit in height. I like to end up between 050 and 060. A lot of people might look at what I'm doing and say, wait, you should be adjusting that action while the guitar is being held like you normally play it. So sitting in your lap, and that may be a valid point. This is just my initial adjustment of the action, just to see how it's going to play with a little higher action, and then I'll make a final fine-tuning adjustment in a second. And it's playing better. Not perfect. Most of the buzz has gone down low, but it's a little choked up high. I may try and, I'm gonna remove that shim, because when they put in a rear shim, what it did is change the angle of the neck to bring this part of the neck up a little bit. So I'm hoping that if I get rid of that, it may make it a little less choked up here. Okay, I've taken the shim out, and the first thing you want to do is tune up and just check where the action is at. And now it's much higher. So we'll lower that action down and then we can check how it's playing. So I've taken the action down to 0.060 with the 12th fret, and again, tuning up. I should be mentioning that anytime you make adjustments to the string action or truss rod or anything like that, you always got to tune up before you start checking things again. But I think we've got it in a nice place now. All ringing real clear down here. And then as we go up the neck, everything ringing clear. And these high frets that were a problem before, it seemed like getting rid of that shim was just the ticket. No more choke sound. The last thing you do on a setup, right, is just to play every single fret. Okay, yeah, I was hearing just the tiniest bit of buzz right down here on the A string. It's probably nothing, but I did take the fret rocker and just check around here, and I did find that the 6th fret is the 6th. Yeah, so it's got just a tiny bit of rocking going on in the 6th fret, which means it's just a little higher than the other frets around it. So just take one of these little fret calls here and just gently tap it. You don't need to take the strings off, you can just move the strings aside and just go all the way across the fret and kind of gently reseats it. Most frets don't need to be pounded on real hard. You want to be gentle and only do it as much as it needs to sit flat again. Oh yeah, much better. It's that 2nd, 3rd, and 4th fret. Totally clean now. Okay, so this thing's sounding good all over the neck. I like how it's playing. The only thing that was nagging me a little bit was how some of the high strings sounded open. Maybe the G string the most. And you may not be able to tell, but they're just a little dull. Just a little dull sounding. And oftentimes I find that there may be something going on at the nut when I hear something like that. So I'm just going to check what's happening in those nut slots. And so there's a bunch of black gunk in there, and I'm sure somebody put some graphite or nut sauce or whatever type of stuff to make the string slide easier in there, but I can see it's all dried up and not doing what it's supposed to anymore. So it's probably hurting rather than helping, and it probably actually impedes the string sliding easily in that slot, so it can hurt tuning and also make the string sound kind of dull like that. It's already better. Yeah. Got rid of some of that dullness. Maybe I'll just sand it. I'm just taking a piece of folded sandpaper here, and that was a little rougher grit. Now I'll take a finer one and just kind of try and really make it a nice smooth nut slot for that string to sit in. Okay. So playing with the pick. Yep. Much better to my ear anyway. And I'm just going to do the same thing to the B and the high E. That's clearer. It's got a little bit of a funny kind of chorusy sound. May try and just reshape the nut slot slightly with this file. Now, I don't want to take it down much further. I don't want the string to sit too low. But sometimes when somebody cuts a nut, they kind of don't get a nice U shape in that slot, and then it can make some funny sounds. Much better. If you hear a string sounding chorusy, and that's better now, but if you hear that, it may be a poorly cut nut slot, and you want to check those out. And hopefully you can do what I just did, and that is take a nut file and just round it out on the bottom. I think it was just kind of a V shape on the bottom, maybe had kind of a weird shape to it, and that makes the string sitting there wrong, and it doesn't have a solid nut slot kind of bed for it to sit in, and it can make for all kinds of funny sounds when you play that string open. And there's the high E. Sounding good now too. So all that's left to do here is some intonation. High E is a little flat at the 12th. So we'll loosen that. Still flat. So we're moving the saddle towards the headstock right now. That'll make it sharper when we play on the 12th. I will just do this on the rest of the strings. This guy should be good to go. So all the strings are intonated perfectly. The low E was just a little sharp still at the 12th fret, and I couldn't move this saddle any farther back. So it's just running up against the back of the bridge there. One thing I do sometimes, which is kind of a little trick, is just loosen the string a couple turns and completely take the saddle off the screw. Now it depends, sometimes if there's a big old spring in here, you can just cut the spring in half and that'll give you some more room. These have some tiny little springs, so I'm just going to take the spring out completely, and that way we'll have a little more room for that saddle to back up further against that bridge. And sometimes it's just enough to get it intonated. Now here's the thing, you can only go so far sometimes because the screw's about to touch the string, and usually we'll see what happens. Sometimes if it makes too much contact, the screw touching the string, sometimes it can make it sound a little weird. And if I really want to get down to it, what I can do is cut that screw down. A little hacksaw. And then you can get even more out of it. Oh, it's very close now. So close. Now let's see what happens if I really max it out. And now the screw's touching the string. Sometimes it's fine. Other times it'll sound funny. Okay, this one seems okay. And that's just about intonated. That's as close as we're gonna get on this string. But yeah, if you remove that spring back here, you can see that I've been able to move that last saddle back a little further than the others because it doesn't have the spring in the way. I wanted to show you guys one more thing. I just checked the electronics on this. Everything's sounding great. Just a tiny bit of crackle on the first tone knob. So what I do with the Strat, just to make it as fast as possible, is take off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws is usually enough, and then you very carefully pull up the pick guard. You go crazy on it and you'll crack it or something, but as long as you're careful, you can fit your nozzle of your contact cleaner in there and just give them all a quick spray. And no reason to have to take off the strings and take off the entire pick guard. That's just a fast, easy way to spray out your pots on a Strat. Nice and quiet. This baby's ready to rock.